For more than half a century, the Armenian diaspora around the world has been urging politicians to recognize the events of 1915, claiming that 1.5 million Armenians died in eastern Turkey. Yet this number is disputed. Turkey has never denied the Armenian loss of life and also recognized the events of 1915 as a tragedy.
Biz arşivleri sonuna kadar açtık. Ey Ermeniler, varsa arşiviniz siz de açın.
And since that call by President Erdogan, Turkey has enabled international scientists and historians access to its archives, but so far no documents or information proving the alleged events have been discovered. Despite a lack of concrete proof, 31 countries succumbed to the political pressure from Armenian lobbies and diaspora, recognizing the Armenian claims about the events of 1915.
The resolution is adopted.
This includes Germany, France and Belgium. Countries which have their own bloody histories in Africa and Europe are no strangers to the act of committing genocide. Armenian claims were brought to the European Court of Human Rights, and the ECHR decided that the events of 1915 were a legitimate subject of discussion. Turks and Armenians lived together for centuries. They held significant roles in the administration of the state.
Together, the Armenians and the Turks lived for 800 years. 800 years in which things weren't perfect, but in which they lived side by side and managed to survive.
At the end of the 19th century and start of the 20th century, Greece in 1829, Romania, Montenegro and Serbia in 1878, Bulgaria in 1908 and Albania in 1912 declared their independence and separated from the Ottoman Empire. In 1914, after the Ottoman Empire officially joined the First World War against the Entente and had to fight on 7 different fronts, the empire was faced with rebellions and uprisings. Between 1890 and 1915, Armenians began revolts in parts of eastern Anatolia to gain autonomy in the Caucasus and eastern Anatolia. They joined to the notorious Dashnaks and Hunchaks, 2 Armenian separatist groups. These 2 groups armed and paved the way for a Russian invasion of eastern Anatolia. In 1914, the Russians went to war with the Turks. The Armenians decided it was the right time to get what they wanted.
It looked like the Ottoman Empire was going to collapse. It was going to be carved up by the imperialist powers, and particularly Russia was going to have a big influence in the region. So the Armenian nationalists would have concluded that this was their moment of opportunity. Of course, by doing that, they took a great gamble. They took that gamble, and obviously they lost.
The Muslim men had been drafted for war, but Armenian gangs were prowling the Anatolian countryside, committing massacres on women, children and elderly men. Hundreds of thousands Turks were killed in the Zaytun, Mosh and Van massacres between 1914 and 1915. The goal of these gangs was to cleanse the eastern Turkish cities of Turks and establish the great Armenian nation. The commander of the Third Army, Mahmud Kamil Pasha, informed the Ministry of War that armed Armenians were starting to inflict significant damage on the army, and he wanted the Armenians in eastern Anatolia to be sent to Aleppo and Mosul. Talat Pasha had to take action to ensure the soldiers remained at the front and ordered the arrest of 235 people on the 24th of April. Ordering the shutting down of Hinchak and Dashnak party centers resulted in governments convening resolving a mass expulsion. 2,345 terrorists were arrested. The expulsion was the controlled migration of a populace from an area to another. More than 700,000 Armenians were ordered to relocate to Syria and Iraq, and all of these migrations were meticulously recorded. For example, exactly how many Armenians from Sivas journeyed to Syria and how many of them successfully reached their destinations are recorded in the conduct books. As a result of the Armenian allegations, 144 senior Ottoman officials were arrested and detained in Malta for trial. The British authorities concluded that the charges could not be proved in court. Hovhannes Kajaznuni, the first Prime Minister of Armenia and one of the leaders of the Dashnaksution party, addresses this in his book Has Nothing to Do Anymore. The decision for mass expulsion was appropriate with its goals. Turkey acted in defense. The British invasion gave hope to Dashnaks. They massacred the Muslim population. The Armenian acts of terrorism were to win Western support. Nobody but the Dashnak leadership is to blame. In 1921, a secret Armenian network based in Boston, named Nemesis, established. The Turkish Minister of Internal Affairs, Talat Pasha, was assassinated in Berlin by the Armenian terrorist Sokomon Talerian at point-blank range with a gunshot to his head on the 15th of March 1921. Terrorism was memorialized by Armenia with the construction of a statue in his honor in the town of Marolik. The statue depicts Terrorism stepping on Talat Pasha's severed head and posing heroically with a pistol in his hand. After the assassination of Cemal Pasha, one of the founders of the Party of Union and Progress Committee, and Seyit Halim Pasha, who served as Grand Vizier in 1915, Nemesis remained silent for many years. On January 27, 1973, Gorgan Yanikian, who joined the Russians to fight against the Ottoman government, assassinated Turkey's Los Angeles chief consul Mehmet Baydar and consul Bahadir Demir in the Baltimore Hotel in Santa Barbara, California. Following in Nemesis' footsteps, during the 1970s and 1980s, the Armenian terrorist groups Asala and JCAG committed over 230 armed attacks, killing 71 innocent people, including 31 Turkish diplomats, and seriously wounding over 520 people in a campaign of blood revenge. Contrary to the Armenian diaspora's claim of 1.5 million Armenians killed in the events of 1915, the fact is that 3 million Ottoman subjects, the vast majority of whom were Muslim Turks, were killed between 1912 and 1922, in contrast to the small number of Armenian subjects lost their lives due to starvation and epidemics.